That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
I'm staring at Trey through the screen, just so everybody knows. What's going on, OneCast fans? Welcome to a special Tuesday. I don't know what day of the week it is. Long weekend. I'm all messed up. I think it's Tuesday.
Emergency Live
with Brad Fuller of the NPFL. Before we get rolling real quick, I'm going to say it super fast. OneCastFishing.com, code the OneCast. CarolinaWatersNC.com, code the OneCast. Hobie Eyewear. Use the link in the description and make sure you download the Deep Dive app and check them out. Before we bring Brad on, I'm sure all of you know, you can see him here, but we brought him on as the NPFL decided to prohibit the use of forward-facing sonar for the 2025 season. This is out of character for us, right? We don't typically get into these conversations as the OneCast, but we felt this was important. They're the first league to make a decision and one of the most talked about, I guess, topics in all of tournament fishing and fishing, period. So we wanted to bring Brad, who's been on the show several times before. He's a friend of the show, a friend of ours personally. And we know this decision wasn't easy, and it was made for the right reasons. But before we start into it, I just want all of you to know, if we have new folks, I'm not going to put up with the BS in the comments. So if you're coming here just to bash people and talk about how terrible, why the league's not going to be around anymore, I'm just going to ban you. Like, if you want to have a respectful discussion about why you disagree, that's fine. But if you're just going to come here and try to argue with each other, I'm just want to let you know right now, I'm not going to put up with it, because that's not what we're about here. We're about education and information. We're going to have an educated discussion. We're going to hear what Brad has to say about why this decision was made. We're going to ask him some hard questions and get those answers. So I just want to preface this with, we're not going to put up with the BS that I've seen in some of the
just
other
be respectful. Be respectful. Be a good person.
Yeah.
With that said, though, if you do have questions, right, we have some of our own questions. Brad is willing to come on as a friend of the show. He wants hard questions. So this is the opportunity to throw your questions up here in the comments to the president of the NPFL. And if there's one that really catches our eye or something, we'll ask it to him, and we'll get an answer for you guys. So, but yeah.
Yep. So you'll see Ben and I are in studio. Trey is coming to us live from Fort Knox. He's actually visiting with one of the NPFL's anglers, Josh Watkins. He's coming to us live with from his house because he's over there to do some work with the Army. So appreciate Josh letting Trey use his man cave there to jump on so we can have this conversation. And yeah, I know you have limited time, Brad. You're probably the least requested guy in all of fishing right now, I would imagine. You probably haven't heard from every other podcast. We're the only ones that reached out. No.
Yeah, we're actually good, man. Like I've got about an hour and 45. Yeah, about an hour and 45 minutes. I mean, I don't think those will go that long, but I've got time. So don't feel rushed or don't feel like you got to jam it up. I just talked to the next one, the Serious Bailey over at Serious Podcast. So I'm going to jump on there next.
Serious Angler. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Serious Angler. Yeah.
Awesome. Trey, you want to get us started?
Well, let's so a lot of these comments, Brad, are being stemmed from what a lot of our viewers are asking, and then obviously driven from our own curiosity. But just overall, why is, in your opinion, forward-facing sonar such an emotional, polarizing topic versus other regulations in fishing, such as the prohibited net use, horsepower regulations, certain bait regulations? Why is this one so emotionally draining on everybody?
I mean, that's a great question. And I've actually spent a little bit of time thinking about that, right? So not to get all into my personal life and stuff like that, but I get up and try to journal every morning. And it's a way for me to kind of talk to myself, either motivate or correct, or it's what I do, right? It's not for everybody, but in that, dude, if you study human behavior, and I know all you guys have in your lives now or your previous lives, human behavior, we are a tribal community, right? Like we have a pack mentality. And I think anytime you see people, whether it's Mercury, Yamaha, Ford, Chevy, people want to be and they want to support people in their own tribe. And I think some of that stuff plays into this as well. You're either for it or against it, or you don't care. Even the people who don't care do have an opinion about it. It's just not something strong enough for them to have to make this a tribal decision. I'm either going to be with this tribe or against it. And I think when you get into kind of, not to go all super psychology on you, you know what I mean? But those things drive your behaviors. And there are people in this world who thrive on the drama of conflict. And when you combine the tribe with the people who drive and thrive on conflict and the people who wake up every day looking for the conflict, and if they can't find it, they create it. I think those are the people we hear the most from on social media. Those are the people who get 90% of the attention, but are really only a single digit percentage of the overall fans that are out there, whether you're for it, against it, or whatever. Those are the people we hear the most from. So if you really look at the people who make those comments and the people who are absolutely over the top about it, you're really looking at a very overall percentage of the population of people who are either audience members or fans of the sport. And those are, I categorize those as two different people. All your fans are part of your audience, but not all your audience are fans of your specific platform or sport. So we often see audience members who are just casual happenstancers. Either, like, I had multiples at Saginaw Bay. Like, I've never watched a bass tournament before in my life because you guys are here. You're in downtown Bay City. You've been here for a week. Like, we wanted to watch and see what's going on. They're part of our audience, but they're not really part of our fan base. The goal is to make sure that you try to convert those audience members to fans and get them to come back time and time again. So not sure if I answered your question, but par for the course for me, right?
The reason why I asked that question, because it ties into this question right here, which was part of your press release on your website. And you guys kind of solidified your thought process behind banning this technology for the 2025 season, which obviously is well in advance from the beginning of the next season. But you guys talked about removing the emotion from the decision to make this decision, right? So what factors, as the NPFL, we call it separating the person from the problem. How did you, as a private business, go about really separating the emotion from the decision, especially since we hear so many people talk about surveys being sent out in polls or whatever the case may be? How did you guys go about, like, I don't know, skinning that cat, for lack of a better term?
So my emotional attachment to this really had nothing to do with the foundation of the decision to prohibit the use of forward-facing sonar. In my opening statement, when I talked about sleepless nights, that had nothing to do with the decision. That had to do with second, third order effects of that decision. And it'll tie right into what you're kind of talking about now. Is I knew that there were anglers in this league who had been here through the thick and thin with us, that this decision was going to hurt their businesses and what they do in fishing, because they're very forward-facing centric. That bothered me. And that was the emotional detachment I had to make from the situation in order to purely look at this as a business decision and not let my personal feelings toward those anglers influence that. I won't say in any way. I think, I'm a human. I care about people. I care about these anglers, especially the guys who've been here a long, long time through everything we've endured at the NPFL. I had to almost separate that on a level emotionally, because at the end of the day, we're running a business. And it wasn't in spite of that I made the decision or didn't make the decision one way or the other, but it was certainly something that I had to contend with personally while we were going through the vetting process of what the outcome of this was going to be.
I have a follow-up on that. Because if you saw, and I know some of these may have self-corrected at this point, but there was a lot of emotional responses yesterday to various posts from anglers who have fished with you for a while, and who I would say are probably some of those forward-facing centric anglers, as you sort of described them. But what was your response to them when they were making the statements that you made a decision to pander to the people that didn't want it in the tournaments and didn't really take their opinion into account. Because before I let you answer that, we know, because we've been there, we know how much you and Paul and everybody that's part of the NPFL cares about those anglers. It's very evident when you go to an event, you do care about every single one. But it seems like as soon as you made a decision that you felt was best for the league, that some of those anglers flipped because they didn't agree with it. So kind of what was your response or your message to those folks?
I anticipated a strong emotional response from anglers, and man, I'm not a hypocrite. I'm guilty of it daily, right? So the way I handled it was I simply, once we made the decision and we set the ball in motion, I stepped away from social media. I had no idea what was going on. The things I did see were sent to me from people that I consider to be close personal friends who genuinely care about my well-being, and they were pissed. And I'll be honest, when I got those screenshots of some of those comments, I was surprised on some of them, some I weren't. But man, and this sounds very, I don't know, like a little bitch, to be honest with you. I don't. Like, sorry if I broke a code on the One Cast podcast, but like, dude, it hurt my feelings because of the effort and what we do and how we don't say it. Like, we don't say, oh man, I really care about it. We just go out and do it and prove it. Deeds, not words. Like we do it at every event. And the more I thought about it, I was like, man, those guys are emotional. And I think this will change as time kind of goes on and they hear. And we never really went into a lot of the details I went in that I'll go in today with you or Luke or Matt on BTL this morning, because I just don't feel like the anglers as an entity or even individuals have the ability to look at it with empathy and context of the greater business. And that's not a dig towards those guys. They've got their own LLCs, their own needs, their own priorities, their own families, their own challenges, their own strives that they have to worry about. And they should be emotional about it. Like I think those guys have every right to be upset. But I've always told the guys, man, at every turn, I've always told every angler, hey man, I want you to do what's best for you and your family. If you think leaving the NPFL and going to the Opens is your best move for you and your family, and that's what you do, I will be the biggest supporter you have in the country. If you make the elites out of the Opens and you go to the elites, like, dude, I text those guys regularly. Hey, man, I sent a group text. Hey, the NPFL is watching. We wish you guys all the best. Go crush them. I hope you win a blue trophy today. The thing I was disappointed in is that was not reciprocated when I made the business case that I feel like this is the best decision for the NPFL. And it was quickly evident to me that just wasn't reciprocated. And I think that's the thing that kind of dug in the most and kind of got to me, and why you've seen some of the reaction I had from Luke last night on Luke's show. Most of those guys have recanted and just said, hey man, I apologize. I was emotional. I said some things I wish I wouldn't have said, so on and so forth. And man, it's over and done with for me. Like, I'm not a hypocrite. I've said and done things probably today that I regret. So I get it, man. And I think it goes to the passion and how much these guys put on the line to go out there and do this week in and week out over the course of a season with us.
Let's if you guys want to, let's try to dive into kind of the process that you all went through.
We can get in that. I want to ask one more question while it's still fresh.
Okay.
Because you sort of talked about the folks that are viewers are not necessarily fans, and the ones that are sort of anti are the loudest, right? Like, those are the ones that everybody hears. So what do you have to say to those people that are out there saying that you made this decision solely for publicity and for relevancy? What do you have to say to those folks? Because if you've looked at social media, it's everywhere, and we know better because we know you. I want you to speak to those that don't know y'all like we do.
Well, I think, look, man, I think when you make a decision like this, Pete, you have to dig down and really figure out, like, at your core, what you believe. Because at the end of the day, whether this succeeds or fails, this is on my shoulders. This is on our shoulders. And we made this decision, right? So you damn well be prepared to look back and go, I was right or wrong on these counts. But you have to hang your hat on something. Here's what I believe. I believe that this technology left unchecked will literally transform tournament bass fishing into something that we don't even recognize, right? I believe that. I am a pretty tech savvy guy. I spent my military career as special operations dealing with very similar technology. And I think I have a pretty good indication and idea of where this technology is going and what the capabilities are. But beyond that, so that was a major thing. Like, I believe in 1 to 2 to 5 years that the industry cannot let this technology go unchecked. Therefore, if you believe that, what's going to happen? They're going to have to put it in check somehow. So therefore, if I believe I can be in front and be first, that's a good thing for the NPFL. Now, I might be right, I might be wrong, but again, you go back to what you believe in. I also believe that, man, it wasn't just a short time ago that the NPFL didn't even exist. And certainly no one thought the NPFL would be sitting here with the ability or the capability to influence an industry and do something like this at this level. Hell, if you'd have told me this 2 years ago, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But the reality is we were put in a situation where we felt like we had an advantage over the other entities that we're competing against for sponsor dollars, audience, and fans. The fact that we can make this decision with no really very minimal risk to dollars, like it's not going to affect our bottom line because we don't have any major endemic sponsors that are here to support us. And that's fine. Like they're invested in other entities and we wish them all the best. My job is to grow this league into a formidable competitor to those where they can't not be here, right? And again, we feel like this moves us in that direction. I think thirdly, when you look at tournament bass fishing holistically, and you look at it very simplistically in a very like the entire picture, Champlain, St. Lawrence, and Saginaw Bay. Strip away the logos, strip away the jerseys, just put a silhouette of an angler up there. Like you can't even tell who they are. Bro, it all looks exactly the same. The diversity in the viewership and what people can consume from content is literally non-existent. It's all just exactly this. The names on the jerseys are different. The logos are different, but the content is relatively the same. Again, if I have a chance to diversify our content and put different stuff out there, again, I believe that's good for the NPFL. And lastly, if I have an opportunity to force a shakeup and divide up the assets that are in bass fishing, sponsorships, audience, and fan base, as the lowest guy on the rung of the ladder, I think that's a good thing for the NPFL. That we're probably not going to drop any lower, but I have the probability to increase my stature with sponsors, fans, and audience by making this decision. Again, those are all yet to be proven, but like I've said it, we're going to find out. So when we look at the business aspect of what we're doing, and there was a turning point for me when we were on the phone with a sponsor that we had never had a previous conversation with. And we asked them, hey, man, what do you guys want to see? This is a major conglomerate sponsor that's very much a mainstay in the industry. They own multiple brands. And that person said, here's what we want. We want someone to take charge, be a leader, and make a stand on some principle that you believe in. And I just thought, man, that's us. Like, that's me. That's I'm willing and able to do that. And then you kind of start looking at the risk factors. You go, man, I think this is the right move. And the closer we got, the more adamant I was that this was the right decision. I want to address one thing that you mentioned, and Ben, you made, maybe this is where your question's going, but you talked about the survey. That survey was not an NPFL survey. I actually refused to do a survey because of when you give anonymity, like I don't think it's real, right? So I wasn't really willing to do an anonymous survey. I wanted to look the guys in the eye. I wanted to have a conversation with each one of them individually, and I did that. The survey was put out by an angler, and you know, there was another major reason. This was before our last event, I believe. And the reason I didn't want to do the survey is we're in the middle of our season. I don't want to start to cause tribal lines to be developed within the NPFL in the middle of a season. Now you can say, well, you're doing it with 2 events left. And I've got a very good reason why we announced this now that we can get into in a little bit. But that wasn't, the NPFL had nothing to do with that survey.
Yeah. I think that's important, and I know that angler reached out to you about doing it, and you basically said you weren't interested, and they went ahead and did it anyway, which, that's their right. But I think it's important,
yeah.
Trey and I, when I was driving to the airport at 2:00 in the morning, because he likes to fly at ungodly hours this morning, we were having a conversation about everything going on, and we, everybody's done a survey at their job, whether you're in the Army, whether you're in the Air Force, Navy, public sector, whatever you do, you've gotten those surveys. And I can tell you, depending on who sent me the survey, depends on how I answer that survey, right? I'm more likely to be honest with a peer, or maybe if I know that peer is one way or the other, to go with what I believe their belief is or what they want to hear versus what I truly believe. Whereas if my boss asks, I might go a completely different way. So surveys, for as good as they are, for certain things, human nature tends to sway your response one way or the other based upon who's asking the questions, right? It's really hard, I think, for us to sit down and give our own honest opinion when it's our boss or our manager or somebody, because you don't want to look negative in their eyes. And that's where you come in with the anonymous, right? Like if you're anonymous, then they don't know. But then that brings in a whole nother can of worms. So
yeah,
and it's just
my concern about the survey too was, man, this, and I've went down this road, and I've thought about how I've said it, and I'm pretty steadfast in what I believe here, and I'm not going to change what I said. I might change the way I said it. The reality of this is, like in the angler meeting we had at Saginaw Bay, right? I wasn't looking for anglers to stand up and agree or disagree with the decision. That was irrelevant. Right. I don't care whether you agree with our decision or don't agree with your decision. I was looking for someone to bring us point and counterpoint and make a valid case and bring something to the table that we hadn't thought of. I didn't want to make this decision. Then an angler called me in a week and go, hey, man, did you think about this? And I'm like, well, crap. No, I didn't think about that. That changes everything. The likelihood of that happening was very unlikely, just because of the time, effort, and emotional equity we had invested in looking into this situation and making a decision. But I still felt like it was the right thing to do, to offer the anglers the opportunity to have that injection into the business. There was not one angler that stood up at that meeting and spoke that I hadn't already spoken to. I knew what each angler was going to say, relatively speaking. Maybe not to the T, but you know what I mean? So the thought that, well, your decision was made, it was a fake meeting. It wasn't a fake meeting, and our decision was not made. That same sponsor I just talked to you about asked us point blank before Saginaw, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm not willing to obligate myself one way or the other until I have this angler meeting and I've uncovered every stone. That's reality. Whether people believe it or not, I don't care. That's fact. And that's the way it went down.
Yeah. And whether you want to take our word for it or not, I feel like I know Brad and Paul and the rest of the leadership over there well enough to tell you that if somebody had come with a compelling argument and he says that their decision wasn't made yet, that they could have swayed the decision if they had good factual based evidence and it wasn't emotional. But this is such an emotional topic that it's hard to come with facts, right?
Yeah, man. But I will tell you, I was really proud of the guys. So we had about it wasn't mandatory you save for the forward facing part. I'm gonna say maybe 100 guys are in the room. I don't know. We didn't count. 7 guys. We made everybody register and sign up so you could get up and speak, because I didn't want this to turn into a 7-hour point counterpoint amongst anglers and get into a pissing contest. 7 anglers stood up and spoke. Bro, they were all you could tell they had put a lot of thought into it. They had their points. They checked all the boxes as they went down, and you could tell that they took it very seriously. And I sincerely appreciated that. I mean, that it wasn't like anybody got up and just kind of rambled on and had no points. Like they were prepared, and it was a professional environment. I was very happy about that for the organization.
That's awesome. Hey, I'm going to address a couple just real quick comments. So Jeff said, they can't practice with the forward-facing sonar pre-tournament either. I'm assuming that's right, Jeff, that it's also going to be prohibited during official practice. So they can use it during pre-practice, but not official practice. Correct, Brad?
That's correct. Yeah, our anglers don't fall under tournament rules with regard to equipment. Like if they want to go out and pre-practice, like before the official, and throw an A-rig or whatever they want to do, like they're not under tournament rules until they enter the official practice period. Now, like they still have to follow the rules of no information and all that stuff. But as far as fishing goes, like they're not under the same set of rules. So yes, they will be able to use it during pre-practice, pre-cutoff. That when they show up to start official practice, they will not be able to use forward-facing sonar.
And I don't know if it's one of the questions here that we're getting from the audience, but I have seen it before. But what's the mechanism to prevent live scope from running during the official tournament hours
without having to tear your boat apart?
Yeah. So when we started looking at this and going down this path, the one thing I said was guys cannot be required to de-rig their boats, right? Like whatever that means. Like if you've got 1 or 7 transducers, whatever you run in your daily life. So we're currently looking at some lockout type devices where we'll have a serialized security seal that we'll put on a lockout device. We'll assign that to that angler, and that's how we'll lock it. We'll lock out the connection where all you can do is unplug it from your unit, put a lock on it, put the security tab with the serialized number assigned to that angler on there that we will track. It's really pretty simple, man. It was not a complex problem to solve.
I didn't figure it would be, and that was what I had envisioned. But I know that's been a highly asked question, and we had some folks ask on our post. So, but to what Ben was going to ask before I asked my question, was sort of like what drove the decision, right, Ben? That's what you were looking like. What was the real driving factor? And I know you went into it in your release some, and clearly not everybody has read the release. They've just saw that it was prohibited and immediately jumped in the comments. But just kind of reiterate, what went into the decision, what drove the decision to prohibit it for the 2025 season and moving forward from there.
Yeah, I think, what I went through kind of my 5 points of light to still a George Bush kind of term from back in the day, right?
Yeah, that's going back a while.
Yeah. I think if you said, hey man, give me the number one reason that you guys decided to take this path. I think looking at the diversity in the sport from a content generation and content side of what we do, we felt like there was a real and immediate opportunity for us to separate ourselves at a league. And so I'm going to give this guy full credit because he put it like, I'm kind of a simpleton. You know what I mean? Like the simpler you can make something for me, the better I'll understand it. And he is Ken Duke. And he's like, here's what this really is. We've lived in a town with 3 ice cream shops, right? All 3 ice cream shops have only served vanilla ice cream. We just came into town and we're going to offer chocolate. Not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody wants chocolate. Some people are perfectly content with vanilla. But for those people who want chocolate instead of vanilla, or they want a little variety in their life, we're now an option and they have a choice about where they spend their money at to buy vanilla or buy chocolate. That's as simple. That was like the most poetic way I could put it and simplest way I can put it. That's the crux of this decision.
As you went through the process, and we know you talked to all the anglers. I assume when I saw you down at ICAST, some of those conversations were going on with you and Paul down there, and whoever, any anglers that were down there and sponsors potentially. And I think you make a great argument for the league and why this decision was made going forward. But what was the biggest hesitation or reservation, or what was the, kind of the counter argument of maybe that maybe took a little time and getting over the hump to make this decision?
I think coming to realize and becoming comfortable with us being in an uncomfortable space. I'm not risk averse. Like if I can see the risk and analyze the risk and know the risk and make an educated decision about the risk, I'm comfortable, right? I made that choice. I think there were so many unknown variables about, hey man, can we fill a field? Are sponsors going to react the way I think they're going to react? Are the fans going to react in a way that when we finish this process and we go into 2025, are we a better company if I make this decision? I keep saying if we make this decision. That was the biggest hurdle, Ben, to get over, to get comfortable with those variables and to know that I had explored all those variables and that I still came to the same conclusion. That's what took a long time to really dive into each one of those and go, man, at the end of the day, when I get through all these hurdles, is the NPFL a stronger entity within the bass fishing market? And are we a better company, more profitable, generating more revenue, all the things you need to do as a business? And can we do that and maintain the culture and maintain what the NPFL is? That was the hardest thing for me to get through on all this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you go forward over the next, 2025, no live scope, I assume with the league is always willing to relook things. But so what will you be looking for over the next year or 2 years what I'm asking is your MOPs and MOEs, like how do you determine whether or not you made the right decision? Like, what are you looking for?
Well, let's let the world look into a little concept development here, right? So concept of operations, how we're going to press forward. So we're going to go on military speak on. If you're not familiar with it, just get your dictionary out for acronyms and get ready. So
are familiar.
Yeah. So we literally, I had this conversation in a couple of phone calls. I'm like, look, man, we're looking for, on the CONUP, we're looking for the most dangerous course of action, then the most likely course of action. What do we think is the most likely thing to happen? But if that doesn't happen, how bad could this be? And can we survive the bad? Right. So we talked about all those things. And then we looked at risk mitigation and on all those factors same thing you do on a military CONUP. Right. And through that development and through exploring those options, Ben, it just kind of, if you do the things in the right order, in the right way, the answer kind of finds you. You know what I mean? And I really feel like in this case, the answer kind of found us. That literally by the end of this, I was like, man, not only do I think we should do this, I don't think we cannot do it. So when I look at MOPs and MOEs, what I'm looking at is, are we generating more revenue? Do I have more interest from sponsors that maybe we're on the outside looking in? Is there a environment that we can create that entices sponsors to come on board because we've created diversity? We've separated ourselves and they see an opportunity to market with the NPFL and spend dollars with the NPFL. And there's a little bit of cause marketing, right? Are there companies out there that believe what we believe and see what we see, and they simply want to get behind you and help you move the needle and succeed? That's what I'll be looking for. Are we generating more revenue? Does our audience increase? But simply banning forward-facing sonar isn't enough. Like simply saying we're going to ban forward-facing sonar and all the things going to happen. You guys know we just hired Ken Duke to be like our chief of communications, messaging, and all those things. And Ken put it to me today, like this is the new NPFL. Keeping a hold of those altruistic truths that you get up and live and breathe and eat and sleep every day about how we do at tournaments, logistically, how we support anglers, all the things we do. But the new NPFL is going to be a content generating machine. So over the next starting here very shortly, you guys have already seen the columns that I've written. All the anglers are putting out multiple columns a day. And we're trying to engage the fan base, engage and entertain, right? Educate. And we're doing all three of those now via copy and being articles on the website. The next phase that we're starting here, hopefully this week or maybe next Monday, we'll be putting out 2 to 3 videos a day that will either be entertaining, educational, or they'll be engaging. There'll be a life story from an angler. Hey man, I couldn't see myself in bass fishing if it wasn't for this moment. I couldn't go to the water without this piece of equipment. We shot 126 of those videos with 22 anglers at Saginaw Bay. We've gathered the content, we've co-located the content, we've parsed the content, and now we're ready to disseminate the content. I think another thing for the NPFL is look at how we distribute that information and how we engage the fan base and the audience with the content that moves the needle for sponsors. So not only are we generating that content in a very deliberate way, but I'm engaging with sponsors going, hey, Paid Pro Guide, what do you need? What gap can I fill for you with content generation? Because you're a sponsor of the NPFL and I've got anglers. Like, what can I do for you? What articles can I write? How can I educate, entertain, and engage your customers on your behalf through the NPFL vehicle? So it's not just banning forward-facing sonar. I'm like, man, this is a much bigger deal than that. And it's really, I feel like, and I said it today, I feel like the NPFL is just getting started because this is the piece we've been missing. When I look at the gaps and where we were falling short, this is where it was. And I'm pretty good if I can identify something, I can go fix it. But I just think I had a hard time identifying that because we were so entrenched and ingrained into developing what we felt was the best tournament trail logistically and culturally out there. We did that, like box checked. Now we need to start filling in the gaps and get this media machine, the NPFL media monster rolling. And man, I'm very happy with the way all that's going.
Hey, so what you just explained was basically the answer to the question about, we hear the comment or we see the comment all the time, a very condescending comment, so much for an angler driven league, right? And it's not all about the anglers. And so from your perspective, do you think like a lot, and this is and by no means to draw a divide between the anglers and the league, but people need to understand it's a private business making private business decisions, but complicated with paying customers that expect something in return. But when the anglers say it's supposed to be an angler driven business and we're not being heard, but you just describe all of those opportunities that are being created. How do you find the balance and how is that being communicated to the anglers so that they really truly understand the 30,000 foot perspective rather than the 25-meter target of just tournament to tournament 6 times a year?
Yeah, that's a great question, Trey. And that's a tight wire kind of rope dance, right? I want to correct you on one thing. Like when you say angler driven, I think angler centric is a better way that we put that, right? Because anglers will not drive a business. They will not. They are incapable. And I think an angler that's very honest with themselves would say, yeah, man, the inmates can't run the prison, right? The patients can't run the asylum. And that's that. I don't mean that to be derogatory. It is, but man, mutually beneficial is a term that we've used a lot. And I had anglers say, man, if you can just hang on for 2 more years, like we really feel like this thing's going to turn around. And I'm like, why would I wait 2 years and beat my head in the pavement when I have an opportunity now? You know what I mean? And just like if you had an opportunity to increase your stature and increase your prominence and increase everything that you need to increase in your business, I would tell you to go do that. Like, why are you sticking around here if you can go be on the elites and whatever that means for you, right? Whether it's pride, whatever that is, like, the anglers have an absolute input and we listen to every single one of them. I don't think anyone could ever argue that. But the argument of, well, the anglers said they didn't want this and you did it anyway, so you don't care about the anglers. I think that is a far, far cry from what reality actually is. When we say we care about anglers, we do things that I think we show through deeds. And man, I'm not a chest pounder on this. Like, I think you can call every angler in the field, and I hope every one of us have an example of some way we went above and beyond to give them aid or make them a better angler or a better person somewhere along the way. Angler had a big nail in his tire, right? Sean Mulhall, unprovoked by me, said, hey man, give me your keys, run that down the tire discount and get it taken care of for you. That kind of mentality is what we are. Like, it's not something we do, it's who we are. So when I say angler-centric, you have to put your decision matrix in and do things like, hey man, not one angler parked his vehicle at this last event. Because of logistics and the way it was, we parked all 118 vehicles were parked by an NPFL employee. And then those guys were picked up and hand delivered by vehicle back to their vehicle. Now there's a logistical side to that for me because I need to expedite it, right? Like I need things moving. But in the reality was, we could just say, hey man, you're a professional angler. You get yourself in the water and you get yourself out. It would literally take twice as long. But it goes to the look and feel when an angler leaves a tournament, it goes, man, those guys were here with us. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the trenches with them. First one at the ramp, last one to leave, even on practice days. This is different because it's such a big playing field. But like when we're all putting in at one ramp, one of us, myself, Paul, Al, somebody is at the ramp till the last angler comes off the water. We're not there to check and make sure that they're off by off limits time. We're there to make sure they're safe and that they're back and they don't have a problem. They're not stranded on the water. So yeah. Did I answer your question, Craig?
You did, Brad, and I appreciate that. And that ties into this next one. Then I'll turn it back over to Ben and Pete. You know, the forward-facing sonar technology obviously is extremely polarizing, but I really think there's a lot of other things that have been happening with the NPFL and throughout the fishing world that haven't got nearly as much attention, right? Showcasing the charity events that you guys go to, the community service events, showcasing all these different success stories. And, I want to put Zach Burge on the spot because I saw a comment that he made, which I thought was a very glass half full perspective on just because you're banning a piece of technology, it's opening the opportunities to showcase other things such as different baits, different rod and reel combinations, and target some of those sponsors that have really been neglected because of the use of the technology. Even though I love the technologies just like you, just like Ben and Pete, I'm sure it has caused some concern in the industry. So can you talk about that? Because earlier you talked about, hey, there could be some business ramifications for some of the anglers, but there's also some opportunities that are being created from this as well. Am I kind of on the mark with that?
Yeah, I think, and look, man, I finished, I was in here till about midnight last night, and I literally just kind of sat here and I was like, man, let's look at this from a different perspective. Like, let's put our thinking cap on and get quiet and just ponder. Is there a way that I could go to Lowrance, Garmin, Johnson Outdoors and say, hey guys, we don't have forward-facing sonar, which means I'm going to be able to highlight and bring to light other lines within your product line. You've got plenty of advertisement and marketing on the forward-facing sonar deal. Like, is there a way that I can market different segments of your business and show you more value to earn your dollars? And I haven't came up with anything yet, in all honesty. but I think having that kind of mindset and looking at sponsors, like when you look at, like, cause marketing is one thing, right? Like people getting behind you, not because of what you do, but because of what you believe and how you act. That's one thing. But when it comes down to raw return on investment, ROI, I spend X, I get X back. Like, I think you have to get very creative. And it goes to that media monster that I was talking about earlier. I think creating pathways and vehicles, and sometimes it's not about creating a pathway, it's about reducing a barrier to entry. So looking at those potential, when you identify the barriers to entry for said company, and like, hey, I can't market for you, but I can reduce your barrier to entry, and I can reduce your customer acquisition cost potentially. Like, you start talking in those terms, and now people start to, they scoot up to the table a little bit. They get their pen out, they start writing down. So I think in those ways, Trey, you're exactly right. Like, I think there will be, and again, the old gray school, plus column, minus column, positive, negative. We just feel like there's more pluses in the positive column than there are negatives on the other side because of the potential opportunities that we could open up.
No, and I'll just make this last comment. We were talking before the show, and listen, if the NPFL banning the live imaging forward-facing sonar, we're not talking about 360. We're not talking about floggers, right?
I hate bloggers, but go ahead.
If Garmin, Lowrance, and Humminbird closes their doors because the NPFL bans forward-facing sonar, I say they have a really bad business model, right? And
man, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, all right? But what is going to happen is it's going to create opportunities like you talked about. And listen, we wanted this show to be about asking the hard questions, and I think we're asking some pretty good questions in here. But at the end of the day, it's a private business. Nobody's a share owner, or if it is, it's a private share, right? You can't go to McDonald's and ask for a Whopper. They don't sell them, right? That's just the reality behind it. Go to the other business. And you mentioned that in your other shows. There's plenty out there for everyone, and you're creating opportunities for everyone to diversify their portfolio. I just think we just need to showcase the positive aspect of it because the technology's out there and it's not going away. And to be fair, competitive bass fishing anglers are a very small percentage of the technology, of the users of the technology that exists out there. The saltwater world is booming with it, right? The recreational anglers make up way more of the population than competitive bass fishermen do, right? So Anyways, I'll turn it back over to Pete and Ben, but I appreciate that, Brad.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. I'm just going to read a couple comments because I think Chelsea eloquently stated what's been said here, not in the terms of
course you did.
Of our anglers, us rough, tough anglers talking. She said these choices are enabling anglers to be better, mutually beneficial for the NPFL sponsors and anglers. One feeds off the other, strategic decisions made to further benefit all partnerships. She also said success comes from attitude and approach, how each angler will react to and respond to changes made. We all work through these changes every single day in our professional work lives. And I think that's exactly it. Success in the league, success for the league is how attitude and how it's responded. And we've seen positive and negative attitudes. It sounds like some of those negative attitudes have had a little bit of a change of face. And now that the initial shock emotional reaction has worn off. But yeah, I want to go into some of our viewer comments. So we talked a little bit about, anglers and some of them aren't happy. I'm sure some are not going to come back based on this decision, just because of how they are. You're going to have folks that want to come because of the decision. We've seen, like Trey said in the beginning, this is probably the most polarizing and emotional topic maybe that bass fishing has ever faced. I remember the mapping and side imaging debate, and people got pretty emotional about it, but it was nothing like what we're seeing today.
Drop in the bucket.
Yeah, compared to where we're at right now, it was nothing. So Chris P Outdoors over on Instagram asked, do you have any plan to increase angler limits? Because clearly it appears this is going to increase the likelihood that some of the anglers from Bass, MLF, and other organizations may try to fish who aren't fans of forward-facing sonar.
The answer is no. Just logistically for us, like, man, we would really like to be in the field reduction business versus, because just with the trailered weigh-in and how much effort it takes for us to do what we do. We didn't do a trailer weigh-in at Saginaw. You know what I mean? Because of logistics and the way the park's set up, and it was awesome. The anglers loved it, I think. But anglers like, hey man, like, don't start this. Like, we like the trailer weigh-in. My sponsor loves seeing my wrap truck and rig roll through 3 guaranteed times a day. You know what I mean? Like, so there was that. But no, I think, listen, man, like, we haven't yet filled a field. Like, you know what I mean? We were really close this year. I'm not going to say woulda, coulda, shoulda. There were some people that we did not take some of the anglers who applied that were, pay to play. That's not exactly true. There were anglers that we did not take in the NPFL in order just to fill the field for various reasons. But once we create a environment where there's more spots available than we can allow to fish. Clearly, that's a box check for some of the questions I've seen in your comments about, are you going to have a developmental league? Well, bro, I haven't filled my field here yet. Like, so, we've got all the models and we've got several business plans in the filing cabinet right here in my idea book for how we would develop a starter system or a feeder system. Then you got to fill that. You know what I mean? I think the way we do things in the construct, I think we could be very competitive in a couple of the markets at the BFL level, in that, the $200 to $300 range, and then in that $1,000 to $1,200 range. But I'm very steadfast, and I will not develop those leagues simply to support the upper tiers of the business. They have to stand on their own merit. The payouts have to be really good. But man, I've got to work and get my payouts really good at the level we're at now, because the payouts aren't the number one detractor. I think for me, from looking at the business model, is, dude, this is all about generating capital and revenue, because I need to get the payouts better, right? I need to pay deeper in the field. I need to pay the guys who finish higher better. And I'm not afraid to say that, like, that's reality, man. But you cannot take an angler generated, for the most part, revenue league, do the production we do, have the web content we do, provide the platform we do, and then pay super deep down the field. It's impossible to do. So we need to raise capital. We need to generate more revenue. And again, that goes back to the business decision that we had here. I think this gives us the best chance to do that.
Absolutely. We have 2 questions that kind of go hand in hand. So Michelle and David, David Fuchs is a longtime friend of the show. Everybody knows very well. Michelle Thomason, who we know through Cash and Fishing Rods and some other industry partners. So her question was specifically around anglers who were sponsored by some of the electronics manufacturers that this isn't ideal for. And then David, sort of to build on that, said, is there any worry about offending those sponsors about showing off new tech products that sort of fall in line with the forward-facing live sonar, you know, especially when anglers are paying to participate to fish in the league?
I'll be honest. I don't really understand the question.
So, is there any fear about missed partnerships or losing anglers just because of sponsorships with the decision to no longer have that technology?
Yeah. So you're saying like an angler that's sponsored by Lowrance. Lowrance says we're not gonna I don't know, do anything to support you if you go fish that league.
Yes.
The answer is worry is not the right word, right? I think it's a natural occurrence based on that's a second and third order effect to our decision. But I think my hope and what we're seeing as of today is that I think there will be other opportunities that are opened up from companies who do want to be here. Look, and this is nothing towards Lowrance or Johnson Outdoor, any of those companies. The reality is they're invested in other segments of this industry. There's no money left for the NPFL. They're not here. They're not going to be here. They're not here. If they're here down the road, it'll be because we build this thing so big and so monstrous that they have to be here. And when they come and say, hey man, we've got to be part of that, then they'll be here. Until then, they've had every opportunity. Like when I've heard, man, just not too long ago at Eufaula, you were showcasing forward-facing sonar and blah, blah, blah. Guess what? We never got a call from Garmin. We never got a call from Lowrance. We did it for free. We proved the concept. We can do it. I didn't care because they were so heavily invested elsewhere. Yeah. So that cost us a pretty good penny to do. We took a shot in the dark, and those companies still chose not to divest from the other entities and come and spread some of that over here. So I don't think this is the question, but when Lowrance, Johnson Outdoors, and Garmin specifically, when they want to be in the NPFL, they'll be here, right? Until then, we're just we need to take care of the stable of sponsors who are here. And I don't look at what we don't have. I look at what we do have. So listen, I know all those guys. We have contacts at every one of those companies. Like we talk to them regularly, and we have very frank and open conversations. And when it's time for them and they're happy with where we are as a company and they want to come join us, they have my number. They will call me.
I want to read a comment that just got posted by Zach Burge that's in relation to this, and then I'll let you continue.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Zach Burge, for all you that don't know, fishes the BPT, also fishes the NPFL. He's been very supportive of this decision. He sees the opportunities as a professional angler. Over on Instagram, he just said there's a ton of others, or I'm sorry, he's still going. If my electronic sponsor chose to drop me due to the NPFL deciding not to let the use of forward-facing sonar be used, I would let them go willingly. And he said there's tons of other opportunity to promote different aspects of those companies. That's a chicken S-word way to opt out of working with an angler. And I know if you're new here, S-word, we try to keep it we try to keep it like at the PG-13 level so that Apple and them don't flag.
Zach's right. I make it just as a businessman, if I'm working in those companies, like someone's using my mapping, someone's using 360, someone's using my side imaging, and it wins the tournament. Like, I mean, that's still valuable to them. And so I don't think that's going to happen. It wouldn't make much sense.
Well,
I
think,
right
listen,
there.
man, the piece that, listen, the piece that you have to keep in the forethought of your mind is not everything is a business decision. It kind of is long term, but bro, there's a lot of politics behind the scenes in bass fishing at the highest levels. Like, don't think for a second, and this has been a steep learning curve for me because I'm not a politician. I don't do well in a boardroom, if you can imagine that, but it's real and it exists. And I'm not begrudging about that, but you have to acknowledge it exists, right? If I build the NPFL machine as big and bad as I possibly can, and it's still not good enough, it's just not good enough. I promise you, there are going to be companies when we roll out our media package for 25 that this is what's going to change the game for the NPFL, more so than banning forfeit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But that is going to be content generation, and how we engage with our audience is going to change the game for the NPFL. That's going to be the major switch. Forward-facing sonar is going to be a player in that, obviously, not having it. But my job is to overcome all the adversity of being the little fish in a fish full of sharks, and a tank full of sharks, and just trying to survive, right? And we're good at that. Like, we've done it for 5 years now. Like, we can do that. We need to start thriving. And I feel like the forward-facing sonar decision, I guess the best way to put it, I feel like was an opportunity to accelerate and take advantage of the media side of what we're doing in concert with this. The media side was already rolling before we made the decision. That's a slow burn process. You guys know, you guys are in that business. Like, it doesn't happen overnight. So as you gather content, like, if it's kind of like, the old 2 is 1 and 1 is none, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to have triple the content you think you need. And, like I said, we're very excited about getting this thing rolling.
Yeah, and I'm going to respond to one of the questions here, because I think we can give a fair. I'm not going to say this is what's going to happen, but I think we have an example. You gave a great example. The NPFL was the first to split screen and angler in their forward-facing sonar unit. They figured it out. They put it up there. I believe it was last year when we were at Hartwell. And you had done it at the tournament before that.
Well,
but no other major tournament organization had done that before. Somebody asked the question, do we believe the NPFL is the first and expect Bassmaster and MLF to follow? I think that speaks for itself. Now, do I think they'll outright ban it? Probably not, because to the point of what Brad was saying earlier, those companies are heavily invested in those other organizations already. And money talks. So if they're investing a lot of money, they're going to have some say in that business decision, right? But I do think the NPFL, Brad, Paul, the rest of the ownership group, everybody making a decision, which nobody else would. Everybody's talking about it. All the owners are talking about it. All the organizations are talking about it, but nobody would make a decision. For them to make a decision, and for lack of a better term, to break that levee open, I think now you'll see the other organizations take a stance, whatever it may be. It may be nothing. It might be some regulation. So do I think that they're just going to follow suit and ban it or prohibit it outright? No, but I do think that it's going to be a decision that sort of breaks the dam open for the other organizations to make a decision, because they just haven't. Everybody's talking about it, right?
And look now, like if you want to say we got 3 major leagues, like each one offers something different now. All right, so Bassmaster is your traditional 5 fish. You can use live scope, all that. BPT is back to every fish count, and then PFL is purity in fishing, right? No live scope. So that might be a great T-shirt. I might sell well.
So I do have a question, because I thought I knew it in the rules, but I don't. We were talking about it earlier. I wasn't going to ask, but do you allow AquaView during official practice to be used? I know they can in some of the other organizations, but I didn't.
There's no prohibition on that.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. And I know I've seen that comparison made. Again, it's sort of similar tech, but it's sort of apples to oranges at the same time. So,
so have you ever used an AquaView, Pete?
I have. Yeah, you could. It would. Yeah.
I mean, dude, it's not even.
No.
It's not a comparison, in my opinion.
I agree.
Even a nice underwater drone, like it's not the same. It's not as like ease of use. Like, it's not even close to being the same. Functionality to actually catch a fish. You'll see more, but
yeah, absolutely. It's a whole different.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to compare what they think are like technologies, right? And really nothing is alike, but it's all alike. Yeah, it's all technology, but it's all very different. The biggest argument I've seen, we sort of talk about, was, well, if you're banning forward-facing sonar, why aren't you banning 360? Clearly, those people have never used 360, right? Because
let's talk about mapping and power poles and spot lock. Hey, bro, if spot lock had the impact on fishing like forward facing, we would have had the visceral tribal lines drawn about, man, I'm not using that spot lock. That ain't fishing. Like that to me, that's just an ignorant kind of
which
shallow, narrow-minded kind of
Mhm.
view of what this technology actually is and the direct impact it's had on fishing. It takes no skill to walk to the front of your boat and tap a button and hold your boat in one spot. Bro,
that's a great example. Because I've said before on this show, I mean, LiveScope's taken over, but before LiveScope, even up to a couple of years ago, before this became, such an issue and so dominant, like spot lock to me was the biggest and game changer in bass fishing than anything else over like 20 years.
Yeah.
Sign imaging and all that, because if you can hold your spot in 20-mile-an-hour winds and fish offshore, that does change the game if you can stay on a school.
Yeah,
everyone loved it.
And just as a point of conversation, right, Ben? Like I would disagree with you. I think side imaging next to forward-facing sonar was single-handedly the biggest revolution in technology. And as it got clearer and clearer, dude, think about what you can see on side imaging. True. You know what I mean? Like grass points, rocks, single boulders, and the rate at which you could find it. Like it's even better, for scanning big, Saginaw Bay, if you're looking for individual boulders, you're not out there on line scope going down the bank looking. You're side imaging and then coming back. You know what I mean? So, but the thing is, I think I've tried to really dive into this. I think it's being able to see the animal. I think I don't want to quote him, but I think Rick Klung had a quote about this: that bass fishing is the hardest sport ever because you're fishing to something you cannot see or hear. As far as outdoor sports, you can't see, typically, except for sight fishing, you don't know for sure if the animal is even actually there or not. You know what I mean? So that live scope, when you try to really drive it down. And look, man, I love it. I love the fact that it really proved that we're a bunch of idiots and we didn't know jack squat about bass behavior. Yeah. And dude, I'm not saying it doesn't have a place 100%. In the outdoors, right? It's on my boat. I will use it on my boat. I love it. Crappie fishing, bass fishing, bluegill, brim, all those things. I'm not anti forward facing sonar. I'm anti the diversity and the what it's done to the content and how we're engaging our fans as a sport. It's just had a negative impact on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And I Michelle, I appreciate, because I've seen you on a few of the other podcasts asking those questions. And yeah, right now the big electronics manufacturers are not sponsors of the league. So they did something in the best interest of the business. And one thing I want to say to any anglers that are listening, if you are, we have friends on both sides of the aisle here. We have friends who disagree. We have friends who are in hog heaven today.
The fact we have to make a political reference, opposite sides of the aisle when we're talking about bass fishing,
terrible, isn't it? But
it's come on,
opposite ends of the spectrum. However you want to look at it. Some agree, some disagree, and they're friends of the show. They're personal friends. The fact that you made the decision, I don't remember where I was going because Ben messed me up. So
sorry. Well, let me say this, man. And we get into this a lot because I know how, this isn't just a bass fishing problem. This is a societal problem. Yeah. We have forgotten how to disagree, whether it's politics or whatever it is. We everything is so over the top. If you don't agree with me, Trey, you're a POS and I've got nothing for you. You know what I mean? It goes to that level, just like that. Hey, man, why don't you hear the point, counterpoint? Why don't we have a rational, unemotional discussion about this and actually learn and grow from it? Because at the end of the day, and man, I'm going to use this guy's name because I really think he's top notch. And it's not, I'm not saying no one else isn't, but I have a discussion with Kevin Martin. Kevin Martin lives 20 minutes from my house right here in Ohio. Yes, I coyote hunt behind his house and on one of his farms. We're close. We're not close friends. I don't see him every day, but he lives, he's an NPFL angler that lives right here. Craig Saylor the same way. Dude, Kevin and I had a great conversation and we don't agree. Kevin's really concerned about it. Kevin doesn't know what he's going to do. Doesn't know if he's going to come back and fish the NPFL next year after this decision. Bro, Kevin and I are still going to be friends. If Kevin doesn't fish the NPFL, I'm still going to go hang out with him and his wife. You know what I mean? That's the way it should be. because he respects what we're doing and I respect him as a human being. Like that's where it has to start. It shouldn't end there. That's where it should start. And I just feel like people get so wrapped up in they and me and I. And man, I really tried to take into account the very holistic approach from Luke and Fat Cat to Ken Duke to Al, Michelle, Paul, Mike and Kathy, every angler, the anglers' wives. Bro, I know some of the wives better than the anglers because they're there all day with us. Like Michelle and a lot of it, like, and we do things for them and we help them and they ask us and they're appreciative. Man, we're involved in these anglers' lives. The twins, like, you know, they're getting married and having kids. Like, we're a family, dude. And anyone who doesn't believe that just hasn't been here. And I'm really here's what I'm excited about, guys. I'm excited about bringing in some new anglers, and we do every year. I'm not saying we're out with the old and in with the new. I want to say one thing. You mentioned something earlier. I think it was Pete. And it's funny because I would have anglers very early on in this process. ICAST started kind of a storm for us where based on the questions we were asking down there, and Ben, you were down there, like anglers were getting the idea that we were already made up our mind we were going to ban this. So I started receiving a lot of phone calls like, man, don't do this. Don't you listen to Gerald Swindle? Like, he just don't like it. Don't you listen to Matt Heron and Wes Logan? They're just mad because they're getting beat by forward-facing sonar. And it hit me one day, and when I was getting receiving a sermon from one of these anglers, I said, hey, man, do you hypocrite very much? Well, what are you talking about? Here's the irony is you're calling me, wanting me to listen to you, but you're telling me not to listen to anybody else. Yeah. How about this? How about I listen to everybody and make the best decision I possibly can? How about that? You know what I mean? But, dude, this decision is not placated on anybody over the age of 50. It's not to cancel out the young guys. Here's the reality, bro. We're going to have some young guys who come into the NPFL that you've never heard of that aren't going to use forward-facing sonar, and we're going to build them into an NPFL star. That's the reality. You go record this, put this clip away, and bring it out in 2 to 3 years. There'll be some young kid who comes here without forward-facing sonar and makes a name for himself in the sport. That's what I'm excited about, the opportunity that we're going to be able to do that. That will happen.
Yeah, and you sort of answered a question, and Jeff. I'm going to read Seth Ellis, who's an NPFL angler, a friend of ours, friend of the show, friend of us personally. We fished with him. He's Team One Cast. He said, I think people are forgetting that the NPFL selects their anglers, which go back and watch our previous episodes if you want to learn how you get to the league. As an angler that was selected to be on the NPFL, I'm grateful for the opportunity and applaud the decision and support the league fully regardless. And then Jeff came in and said where it's going to hurt is using forward-facing sonar to qualify to get to the next level than not be able to use it when they get there. And to that, Jeff, I'm going to make my own personal opinion, and there's probably people here that aren't going to like to hear it, but if you're depending on forward-facing sonar to get you to the next level, you don't belong at the next level, because as open and passionate as some of these guys are that we call scopers, they're going to go out there and kick your teeth in without it, just like they did with it. I can promise you that. I can promise you Trey McKinney is going to take your lunch money, whether he has forward-facing sonar or not. Will Harkins is going to take your lunch money.
He did it. The event this year, he won.
Whether you have it or not.
Forward-facing event.
Trent Palmer, look at his college career. He didn't have forward-facing sonar. Those guys can fish. So if kids are being brought up by parents and coaches to depend on that piece of technology, then their parents and coaches are failing them and setting them up for success at the next level.
Yeah, man. And and I've had that conversation with a couple guys, man. I'm like, look, man, like I feel like this is an opportunity for you to go and show the world. If you choose to do so, if you don't care, you don't care. Right. But like, I'd love to see a competitive environment where you don't have to fight that stigma of, well, you're just a scoper. Hey, man, if that's what you want to be, and you're really, and listen, all those guys you just mentioned are really, really good. Yeah, you know what I mean? But they also can, like you said, they will kick your teeth in whether they have forward-facing sonar or not. And we just provided a platform and an environment where they can come and showcase that.
Absolutely.
I mean, we see, every year, or we used to see it a lot. the jig guy who ends up winning on a drop shot. I mean, people always have their favorite ways they want to fish, and if you like scoping, that you may prefer to do that, but there's a time and place that it's not going to be allowed in the NPFL next year, right? It's you're going to have to adapt, just like everyone has had to adapt to it. Now you're just adapting.
Well, I also think real quick, Pete, I think I'm real curious, like, man, I'm just real curious to look after the first event and just kind of watch the field and say, I think guys are going to enjoy it more. You know what I mean? Like I don't say getting back to, but like our events are going to be, I think they're going to be better. They're going to be more competitive. I think there's a broader scope of anglers who will be able to compete. And I don't know, man. Like, I'm just curious. Those are all very hypothetical questions and they may be dead wrong. And I've heard guys say, well, you better make sure you get your schedule right. Man, we fished the same 30 lakes everybody else fishes. And if we go have a tournament, our best event last year was our worst weight, 33 pounds. It took Luis Fernandez to win Eufaula. Hands down, I think that was our best event from an entertainment aspect.
Agreed.
And he had a lot to do with that. That dude was like, you were on pins and needles. You're like, he's not going to make it. Like, he's going to follow the boat and cease to exist. So I think, man, I think it's going to be fun to walk down the road of this journey, like this path, right? A lot of unknowns, a lot of variables, a lot of question marks. And I'm just excited to see kind of how it all plays out. I'm scared to death on some counts of it, right? Like, it's got to work. Like, it better work. So we're going to find out.
Any business decision's a risk, right? And you got to, like you said, you have to look at the risk rewards. You've got to not be risk adverse. You've got to look at everything and make a decision with the information you have available. And that's exactly what you did.
And then when you make the decision, you just execute.
And I just want to say, I know Trey's got another question. I see him. He keeps wanting to hit on mute, but back to where was it? He said, I believe this will allow the NPFL to highlight many other opportunities with these electronics companies. Yeah, we've talked about that. But what I wanted to say was, if I'm somebody who's been called a scoper my whole career, or that's the only way I can win, the NPFL now is a huge draw to me, right? Because now I can go out and I can shut those people up.
That's true.
And I've been vocal about some people that went and fished higher level leagues. I think just because people saying they couldn't do it, right? So I think you're going to see. There's been a lot of talk about lack of interest because it's been banned, and I think it's going to be the exact opposite. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are wanting to go out there and prove that they can do it without the crutch of that technology. And not that the technology is a crutch. There's a huge learning curve.
But that's the perception of it.
But the perception is that it's a crutch, and it makes it easier to catch fish, right?
Listen,
the perception is they just jump on the boat.
Yeah.
But because I'm convinced that those are people who've never even seen it on the water.
Yep.
Like, if you've ever been on the water, dude, I got to sit back at Amistad and watch Patrick Walters work. Like, I was on the water 20 feet from his boat. Like, I'm telling you right now, there ain't one of us on this call, and probably anybody in your audience that could break it down and be efficient and do with that. It's just not the scope, man. Like, there's so much more to what that guy does and how he approaches trying to harvest that animal and trick it into eating something that's not meant for it to eat, and put it in the boat and bring it to the scales. And he's one of the best in the world at it. Whether he has live scope or not, I promise you, Patrick Walters will be no less dominant in the NPFL. No. Now, will it be more competitive? Absolutely. Will you have more people that are able to probably compete for wins? Absolutely. That's good for the NPFL. That's great for the fan base. That's great for the audience.
Bad thing?
And it's great for sponsors.
You know, I talk about it all the time with tournament fishing. I don't want to go out and fish 100% of tournaments knowing that I'm going to win every single one. If you're a competitor,
shut up.
You want to win, right? But you also want you want competition. You don't get better if you're just going out and dominating constantly, right? So the fact that more people will have the opportunity to compete is going to make angler health and angler morale, which is already very high in the NPFL. If you go to an event, I haven't been to one yet or talked to an angler yet, no matter how terrible of a year they've had or great a year they've had, that has been unhappy. And that is like unheard of. I believe Zach Bird said something last night to that fact. Like, there's no drama at the weigh-in. everybody for the most part is getting along. There's all good things. So I think it's going to, I think you're going to once again have people kicking the door down to try to get in, just to prove that they can fish without the technology. And then you have the guys that are anti forward facing, right? That now feel that they can go out and compete because they don't have to compete against the people that are good with that technology. And I don't want to hear they're just lazy. They didn't take the time to learn it. It takes a lot of time to learn anything that we do on the water. So to say somebody's lazy because they haven't concentrated on forward facing, I think is just an ignorant statement. So if you're of that stance, I just do a little bit more research into what some of these folks do. Trey, you're chomping at the bit, twitching over there. What you got?
Oh man, you can't silence me. No, I just want to say this. I just want to say this. It doesn't matter if it's Brad Fuller sitting behind the camera or if it's a representative from BASS or MLF or a private business owner. We would have the same exact conversation, and I would applaud anybody making a business decision that's founded on our great country being a capitalist society, right? Capitalism is what drives this free market, man. Like, and it's great that people are making decisions, and you guys did a good job at removing the emotion from the decision. And you have your measures of performance and measures of effectiveness like laid out, and you're going to capture that data and you're going to see, hey, maybe it stays the course. Maybe it makes changes, but that's the beauty of being a business owner and stuff like that. So I applaud you just like I would applaud anybody else making the decision. And I know there were some comments that people said it's not about the sport. It's about what's best for the business. Well, sometimes they're synonymous. And I want to make that very clear. Like, just because it's best for the business doesn't mean it's not best for the sport. Sometimes it is best for the sport, which aligns with the business goals and their vision for the future, right? And so anybody that argues that making business decisions that gets people on the water, that keeps competition at the highest level, that has some of the best payouts in the industry with some of the least amount of support isn't best for the sport, I completely argue against that, right?
I appreciate that comment, Jordan.
So, yeah. So, I just wanted to say that, Brad, I appreciate you coming on. I don't have any other hard questions. Keep driving the way you guys are driving, man. We're fans of all the sport in its entirety. And I think it's going to, from a viewer, we are viewers. We're not tournament anglers in the NPFL. We're not business owners in the NPFL. We're viewers. And from a viewership perspective, I think it's great because now I get to see all three different flavors at the national level. That's all I got. Over.
I do have one question. So now that you've banned forward-facing sonar or prohibited it, I'm going to use your softer terminology. I like the professional. You can tell Ken wrote that one. But are the floodgates open? Are we going to get to see rigs in a national tournament again?
Man, how do I answer that? I'm going to defer any comment on that. And I'll make a statement, but not answer your question. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair.
So this is just the tip of the iceberg, man. Like we decided that if we're like this, you've heard full send, all in, letting it roll, blah, blah, blah. Like we've got 2 more major announcements that we'll be making here in the coming weeks. And I believe one of those announcements, while not as polarizing and won't have as visceral kind of reaction, I think that will shatter the conversation, engagement, impressions that we're getting on this conversation. It's something that I've been deeply passionate about and been looking for an opportunity to do it. And since we're just letting the big dog eat, we're going to let them all eat. And you can that's a teaser, but man, I think that's going to shake up the industry probably more so than this conversation.
Wow.
I'm speechless right now.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say to that.
Because now I want to know.
Jet boats and fan boats. Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, man, and it goes to like, listen, let's right the ship. right? I feel like I feel like we've gotten away in some ways from some of the core values and traditional Ray Scott's first vision of what we started this out as. And look, man, we're not purists. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to overstate it, but I do believe that. I may be wrong, but there is 100% the opportunity when we announce what we're going to announce here in the future. And dude, listen, we're not stupid. Like, we're just playing the news cycle, right? Like, we're going to let this thing eat. We're going to let this thing kind of percolate. We got a schedule to announce. We've got some more changes for 2025. And to the guys, man, I just don't like change. Well, then you should just dig a grave and get in it, because change is just change and adapting to change and how we do it. If we're moving, I've never been afraid to make a decision as long as I feel like we're moving in a positive direction. And if you're afraid to make a decision, I will not be paralyzed by indecision. I won't die because I was afraid to pick up something and move the other way, right? I'm not the guy who's going to just sit there and go, I hope somebody comes and rescues me. Like, no, I'm going to take charge of my own destiny, and I'm going to make sure that I'm always moving in a positive direction. If I move in a direction and it's not positive, then I'm either going to own it and change direction, or just push through it and go, well, you made this decision, you idiot. Now you got to deal with it. You know what I mean? So we're not going to be paralyzed by indecision. We're not going to be paralyzed by fear. We're going to send it, and I hope everybody is ready to jump on board and enjoy the ride with us.
I'm ready. I'm ready for this announcement.
Me too.
Looking forward to the schedule. I know we're kind of getting low on time, so I'm going to give folks a chance to get any last minute questions in. But
and as if anyone watching right now have last minute questions, type in and we'll see what we can ask Brad here. But the kind of what I wanted to end on here is, and I don't know when you're going to make this announcement, but at some point, I'm sure the application will open up for next season. There may be folks listening or watching on here now, or on the replay, or when we publish this as the audio version next week. When do you anticipate that application opening? Because there's a lot involved with that. And on the angler side, I mean, everyone has to have their ducks in a row.
And the schedule release.
Yeah.
I know. So for those that don't know, I know he said it about 300 times in the last 2 days on all the podcasts. So I'll say it for him. They're very direct with how they schedule to not overlap with MLF, BPT, Elite Series. So those anglers also have an opportunity to fish not only the league, but also so the viewers aren't having to make a decision on who to watch. So just rough idea of when we may see that schedule come out. And then to Ben's point, when that angler application may be opening up for 2025 season.
Yeah, we've got a couple of ducks to continue to kind of kick in a row. Michelle's giving me the old stink eye across the room, because that's a big deal for her when we open that application process.
Yeah.
The other part of it is, man, is I want guys to know what they're applying for.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this announcement obviously had to preclude that. We have a couple more pieces of information to get out prior, and neither one of those are concerning the schedule. I don't care if an angler knows the schedule or not. If I would tell guys, if you're an angler who's only going to fish the NPFL, if you know the schedule, you're probably not going to get a shot, because I'm not waiting. Like, if there's guys ready to sign up, like, look, man, it's no secret. You've seen what we've done for the past 4 years. Like, look at the schedule. We're not going to California yet, but you know what I mean? So I think you'll know by the timing of the announcements that come out, like, okay, it's a natural progression that the schedule should be, or the application process should open after that announcement. Because there may be some guys who don't like it, to be honest with you.
Oh, there's going to be. I mean, we know you're never going to make everybody happy.
And we all know bass anglers are some of the whiniest people in the world. I mean, that's been proven now over the last 3 years. So it doesn't matter if you try to regulate this or that. I mean,
if you've ever spent 3 minutes in a boat with Trey Thompson, it's like having a toddler in there with you. He's muted. He's talking smack. Nobody can hear him. I love it.
No. I'm just thinking, thank you, Brad, for saving anglers $5,000 so they don't have to spend it on forward-facing sonar. There's a tournament entry fee. You're welcome.
Look, bro, they're going to find something else to spend it on, bro. Listen, don't let them fool you. I don't know where it comes from, but it's crazy, man. Like, there will be some. They can buy 3 more rod setups for that $5,000 with some of the rigs these guys are running. So
that's true. Mm-hmm. I want to read Christine's comment there. She said, it's like baseball. Change always happens. If you look now, we have pitch timers, ghost runners, and extra innings, DH in both leagues now. People are still watching, players are still playing, and sponsors are still sponsoring. And
wait,
I think you
there's ghost runners and
extra innings. Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head, Christine. Like the game is the game of baseball, the game of football, soccer, every sport, every gambling has evolved as time has gone on, and you're just seeing an evolution and finding the balance between too much technology, not enough technology, and I applaud Brad and the rest of the NPFL ownership for making a decision, standing behind the decision, and that's one of the reasons we've had draw to the league since its inception. Now, I've known Paul since you guys first started, so I had a little bit of a personal connection, but still, every time y'all have made a decision, you've owned it, and you don't always see that. There hasn't been a ton of backpedaling. When you've made a mistake, you all have come out and admitted your mistake, and that I think is refreshing to everybody today, because we don't get that anywhere really else in our lives, unless that's your own personal life where you do it. I tend to own my mistakes. I know Trey and Ben do, but you don't see it from leaders of organizations anymore. So I always appreciate that about the NPFL and your leadership and Paul and the rest of the folks over there.
Yeah, Paul, Al, Michelle, Mike, Kathy, all of us, we're dedicated to that. And hey, man, do you guys do like a viewer question prize of the day? Like if you don't, like you should, or if you could get Christine L, I think it's Fuchs.
Yep.
If you can get her address, I want to send her an MPFL hat, because she mentioned my name in the same paragraph as Slick Johnson. Like, hey man, I've made it. So Christine, I appreciate you.
I think that was Michelle Thomason that said that. Yeah, she said.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
I've seen him on the screen more than Slick Johnson lately. So
we'll get both of their addresses if you guys have that ability, and we will send them some MPFL gear. Because man, it's been I didn't like, I knew there'd be a lot of buzz around this, but I feel like I've been behind this microphone a lot. So and matter of fact, I gotta bounce off here in about a minute or two to jump over to another podcast and do this all again.
Very last question then for
Send
me. Did you expect the reaction to be what it is?
Probably exceeded my expectations for just the reach and impressions that we've got from the social media piece. And I attribute that to Ken Duke and the way he chose to put the messaging out and advised us on how to do that. Like he's invaluable, man. And so, I think it even, like, I think it was up to over 1,000 comments, and I think it's clicking on 500,000 impressions. So it's far exceeded my expectations.
Awesome. Well, Brad, I don't have anything else. Trey, if you don't have anything, so we'll let you get, because we know you have another show. We're going to stay and wrap up with a couple final thoughts and comments, and then I'll shoot you a text with those addresses, Brad. And I appreciate you.
Well, I just sent Brad the Christines, but
as always, Ben's wins way ahead of you, Pete.
Oh, wait. Well,
Well, that's because I have it on the website.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good, guys. Listen, before I go, man, you guys have always been super kind to us, even before we were anything. Not that we're crazy big now, but like in the beginning days, like I remember when you guys would do the 3 seats, and just put stuff out on reels. Like, man, it means a lot to have people in your corner and just all the words of encouragement, whether we were doing good or bad, pick me up when I needed it. Like it means a lot. So thank you on behalf of Mike and Kathy, Al, Paul, Michelle, myself. Like we appreciate having friends like you in this industry, and man, just keep up the good work. You guys are doing great.
We appreciate that. It means a ton coming from y'all. Have a good next show. And then try to get some rest, Brad. Everybody, Brad Fuller, one of the owners of the NPFL. Thank you for your time tonight, Brad. Appreciate all the information, and we'll be in touch soon, brother.
All right. Appreciate it, man. Thanks, guys.
See you, Brad.
I'm going to let Trey be big. Big Trey. What's up, Big Trey?
You want to end the stream?
No, I figured we'll close out here with some final comments.
I didn't know if you forgot and you're going to do one of your Pete moments. And
no Pete moments. This is PG-13 still. So I just want to say real quick to our viewers, and I'll let Ben and Trey give their thoughts, is I appreciate everybody jumping on. Tony, I know you want to see those horns behind Brad. I'll get him to send me a picture and I'll get it to you because he's got some impressive ones. But Trey's got some good ones behind him too.
You got some big old fish on the wall too.
But I just want to appreciate everybody that was on and watched tonight. I know we had a lot of new faces. We had a lot of our regulars, so to speak. And I just appreciate everybody being professional and respectful and not debating. I know there were some things said where people probably wanted to get in a little bit of a discussion, but we kept it professional, and that's what we're about here. To Brad's point that he brought up, we forgot how to disagree in this country, and that's one of the things that we're trying to do is be able to have those conversations, opposing viewpoints, and have a respectful conversation and listen to what other people have to say. So Trey Fish came from BBS Tank.
Probably did. No, this was I'm glad we had Brad on. I'm glad when we saw the release yesterday, we're all in our group chat and it is all worked out to get him on tonight, emergency live. So this will, if you want to share this to your friends later, I guess it'll be published live. The video will be available now.
The video will be available instantly live. So definitely share with your friends if you think they could get something from this. We'll also release the audio and visual on our usual Thursday release coming up next week. And
I guess because we haven't really talked about it, I fully support what the NPFL is doing. Now I love live scope. I like scoping. I like trying to chase them and find them around and trick them. I like being able to say, I also love sight fishing. I like being able to trick them that way. And I think I do think over the last several years, it's allowed tournaments to have bigger bags, more fish caught. I mean, look how many century boats we see now.
Yeah.
So at the same time, I fully support the decision because it's become so polarized. It is Democrats versus Republicans on the debate pretty much. And it's gotten crazy. And there's a big population in this industry of viewers and customers, supporters who want to see a trail without it. And they made the decision to do it. And it doesn't financially hurt them immediately because they don't have those type of sponsors like the other organizations do. They're not, the electronic companies aren't invested in them. So they have the flexibility to make this decision. And it's only there's probably only benefits from it.
I think so. Trey?
So let me just clear this up real quick. These are not my deer or fish on the wall. I do want to give a huge shout out to Josh Watkins and his wife Cheryl for hosting me here today. And we're laughing because I'm on the big screen right now. There's a little bit of a lag in it, but everybody has an opinion. We didn't talk a whole lot about the anglers, but the anglers also have a very valid opinion as well. It's a very asymmetric environment in the competitive bass fishing world, meaning you have a private business that people are paying to play the sport and expect some form of customer service from that organization. But at the end of the day, being a private business, they have to make decisions that are going to benefit hopefully both the business and the anglers. But decisions aren't easy. And business is definitely not easy. And so, like you guys said, whether or not, if it was the NPFL sitting here, if it was any other business, it doesn't matter. I commend anybody that is trying to operate a successful business and support everyone that is supporting them the most. You're never going to make everyone happy. That's just not the reality of life. Even if you're fishing at your club level, all the way up to the NPFL, the elites, the BPT, you're betting on yourself. And there's a lot of confidence associated with that or lack thereof. If you feel like you can't bet on yourself because of a piece of technology, then that is your choice. And if you can do without it, and it's like going to a casino. You're either good at blackjack or you're not, and you're going to place a bet or you're not, right? So fishing is this hybrid gambling, sport, business, marketing, advertising, entertainment, really weird place to be. And everybody has a voice, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to make a decision. And that is what is happening right now. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I still applaud it. And that goes for you. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you think it's going to change the viewership experience much? Because, I mean, I'll preface it by saying there'll be some change, but I don't think it's going to be a massive change. Like, not viewership numbers, but like just the product that's put out on live.
I'm probably not. That's a great question, Ben. Like, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I truly don't really enjoy watching fishing to begin with. You hear a lot, or you see a lot of the comments saying no matter what, the angle is going to be at the angler's back and you're going to see that same style of silhouette. But I do think that it's going to bring a little bit of the, what's the word I'm looking for here? The, not the old school, but like, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but it's going to bring that nostalgia back. So I think seeing like a horizon, seeing a tree line, seeing laydown, seeing grass, it's not that you don't see that now. It's just you see pretty much the same thing across the board everywhere. So
because like when I think back looking at coverage 10, 15 years ago, right? I mean, there's still plenty of ledge fishing lakes tournaments out there that they just stare off in the distance, like into the back. And then there's a lot of old videos, like guys are just going down the bank, flipping to the same tree. I mean, the tree all looks the same. The bushes all look the same for miles.
There's not a lot of difference, in my opinion, between watching a guy staring at laydowns and a guy staring at a screen. It's relatively boring. The one difference is I think there is more teaching that goes on.
I could see that because you're not as focused.
The forward facing and you're flipping laydowns, you tend to get more angler interaction and letting folks know why specifically they flip to the back of the laydown before the front.
That's true.
Or why they did that versus, yeah, I see one out there at 50 feet and I'm going to jiggle my minnow in front of it until he eats it. Or, it's just, it provides a different, different teachable experience.
My other, like the second point along with how much is it going to change viewership? Because it will, but how much? Because one thing LiveScope has shown us, and this is also with some of the bass tracking studies, and Paul talked about, Brad talked about, like what we knew about bass fishing, we didn't really know anything. Like all the truths or ended up being lies. I mean, that's not entirely true, but like people are catching fish different places than water column over the lake. Anglers have now kind of adapted and they go searching for those fish. Just like Brad, Brad was talking about, you still use your side imaging to find these places a lot of times. And then you go back with LiveScope. So like, how much has angler behavior changed that they're going to be almost fishing kind of the same stuff, but just using 360 or using 2D, like vertical jigging like they used to do. I mean, they used to video game fish on 2D 20 years ago.
If you're asking, do I think, or to the audience, do we think that anglers are going to put the jig head minnow down? I say no. It's been proven to be extremely effective. I think you're going to see them go about it potentially a different way, where now they're educating the audience on the fall rate at which an 1/8 ounce versus a 1/4 ounce versus a 3/16 ounce with different line size and different types of baits on there. That may be a little bit more educational, especially if you can't math like me and you got to count out loud 1,000, 2,000, 3, until it gets down to 10 foot, right? You're pigging those fish on side scan or you're seeing them on 2D. You're probably going to see that technique still used because it's so effective. But like Pete said, it might be a little bit more educational and informational for the viewer. And it may elicit a response from the angler to be a little bit more talkative to the camera, which viewers want engagement from an
sponsors want that from the angler.
Yeah, sponsors want that too. And hopefully, and it's not going to change, but one of the things I would really love to see happen, and this is just if I was a sponsor of somebody, I would really love to see the anglers get a little bit more active in their 30 seconds on stage, kind of highlight some of those things that they're doing, especially if they didn't have a live camera on them. So, is it going to change the way people fish? I don't know. Is it gonna completely get rid of the jig head minnow technique? Absolutely not. I don't think it will, because I can go out right now and catch them the same exact way without even turning forward-facing sonar on. And especially if you're talking pre-spawn conditions on certain lakes that are deep, things like that, where they're in the, you know, in the ditches and stuff before they move up to spawn. It's a very, very effective way to catch them. But I've always told you guys this, and people give me crap for it. You know, you see a lot of people saying like, oh, you're going to see a bunch of smaller bags weighed in. I really don't care about the size of the fish that are weighed in, because the Sabine River is one of my absolute favorite tournaments to watch, because it's a stupid, grindy, grimy tournament with small fish, but it's extremely dynamic and very competitive. And that's what I think you may see in the future. Like Brad said, is it's not trying to take away what the dominant guys, but it is going to maybe shake some things up a little bit. That's all I got.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I don't have anything else.
I don't either.
I'm exhausted because Trey doesn't know how to book a flight, and I had to pick him up at like 1 a.m. I change it. It gets an hour earlier every time I tell a story. But I think I picked you up at 3:15 this morning, so I get him to the airport. So we get over there and go to work. Seth responded to DJH's fishing question towards him, so I appreciate that, Seth, for being active. Appreciate you all being here. Make sure you head to the NPFL's website. Just Google it, because I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, because I'm literally exhausted right now. I drank a cup of coffee at 5 p.m. So that I could stay awake for this. But
hopefully you won't be up all night.
No, I have no problem. But appreciate everybody being here. Again, appreciate everybody keeping it respectful and professional. That's what we're about here at the One Cast. Appreciate y'all joining. Again, share this with your friends if you want. We would appreciate that, and make sure that you check out the audio recording when it drops. And Trey, anything else?
Nope. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for letting me dial in. Thanks, Josh and Cheryl, for letting me hang out in your living room.
Absolutely. And thank you all again for supporting us, support the NPFL, and helping us continue to grow a culture of anglers, helping anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.